And I want to thank everyone for joining us tonight. And I want to introduce our panelists. Panelists, as we go around the room, we'll just kind of go in a big circle here. Just let us know your name, which school that you represent, and then your year, either that you're currently in at your program, or if you're an alum, just let us know the year that you graduated. Who wants to go first? I like to do a very fair game.
I can start.
Chizoma, go ahead.
Hi, everyone. I'm Chizoma, also Nigerian American, so glad to see the people calling in from Nigeria. I am at the Duke Fuqua School of Business, and I'm in the second year.
Very cool. Thank you. Who wants to jump in next?
Hi, everyone. My name is Frecia. I just graduated from the Tech School of Business at Dartmouth this past June, so it's very bittersweet back in the real world, but very excited to be here.
And where are you currently located?
I am calling from Seattle, Washington.
From Seattle. Okay. Cool stuff. Very nice.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jenny Otancud. I'm a current second year MBA at Tepper School of Business at Carnegie Mellon University, and I'm currently based in Pittsburgh.
Very cool. Thanks for joining us.
I am Daniela. I'm very happy to be here. I graduated Darden in 2023, so last year, very sad. And right now I'm located in Chicago.
Awesome. Very nice.
Hey, everyone. I am Alex. I am a second year at Columbia Business School, and I'm calling in from New York.
Very nice. Okay, very cool stuff. So again, thank you all for being here to do this type of stuff. We think it's really beneficial for current applicants to hear from current or former students in these great programs, so you can kind of pay it forward a bit, right? Because you were all in our attendees' shoes at this event as recently as a year ago or a couple of years back now. So there's plenty of great tips I'm sure that you can share about going through the application process, how to pick the schools, everything that you've learned while you've been there, and telling us a little bit about your program at the same time. So we're going to cover kind of the major topics that we saw through the pre-submitted questions. So we kind of grouped some of them together and came up with some really cool overall topics. So first and foremost, when you're applying to an MBA program, right? So put that hat back on. For some of you, it's a couple of years back, right? But get back into those shoes of like, you're an MBA applicant, you're looking into these things for the first time. What was that thing that like really made you want to go back to school? If you have like one big thing, like what kind of stood out to you? Like what was that moment where you said, yeah, I'm going to go do this thing? Oh, is that a tough one? I'm tough one off the bat here. Yes, Jen.
Mike, I'm happy to start.
Yeah.
So a little bit of my background, I work in higher ed nonprofit space prior to my MBA. I did that for almost 8 years. I also already held a master's degree. It was a master's of public administration at the time. And so school wasn't necessarily what I was thinking at the time. I actually was applying. And I kind of wanted to pivot out of the education sector for 2 reasons. On one end, salary, I wanted a boost. I was in the Washington, D.C. area. And then on the other end, I also felt like I had stopped growing professionally in program management, which is what I did at the time. I felt like once you got the wheel well oiled, it was a machine that just kind of ran itself. And I wanted to be part of the strategic piece. And so for me, that was, how do I get to be part of the leadership team that decides what initiatives we're implementing and dictating those details of how do we adjust it. So that's really what ultimately led me. I'm happy to share more throughout tonight too, but I specifically learned about a scholarship program called Consortium, and one thing led to another, and I ended up in business school.
Very cool. Yeah, and Consortium is a great tool, and definitely we'll follow up with you about that, because I think if there are folks in the room that can benefit from Consortium or other similar types of programs, we've noticed in events like these we've done in the past, people are not as aware of those programs as they should be. So yeah, we'll definitely come back to that as well. Chizoma, go ahead.
Yeah, so for me, my story is a little different. So I actually come from a science background. So in undergrad, I studied neuroscience at University of Notre Dame, and I went into healthcare consulting directly out of undergrad. So even though I've been working in the business field, I didn't have any formal business training. So for me, I knew that I wanted to continue to move up in consulting or eventually move into industry. And I felt like the MBA would really give me the tools that I needed to do that. So that was really after about 6 years at the time I started applying, I realized that if I was going to move up and really make something more of my career, then I needed to go back and get the MBA to get that formalized business training to move forward.
Yeah, that makes sense. Definitely. Really good stuff. Anyone else want to share their story? Yeah.
Honestly, mine, I resonate a lot with Jennifer and what you were saying. I think in my background, so I was in business before. I come from a financial services background, but I was in a middle office function, and I found myself just like reaching my ceiling very quickly, and honestly, just not seeing a lot of other opportunities to grow. And I think I specialized almost too quickly early on in my career that I found it so hard to try to transfer into a strategic role. And that's where business school kind of came in mind. I got to learn about an organization called MLT, Management Leadership for Tomorrow. I'm also a consortium fellow, and it just opened up the doors for me and really changed the way that I think about what my career could be.
Really cool. And see, it's funny. I said there's other organizations similar to consortium, and then you teed that right up perfectly. Awesome. Any other thoughts? And again, not everybody has to answer every question. So if you don't have like a story you wish to share, I'm happy to continue moving on. So no. Okay. So the next piece here is, so that's, what kind of gets you into the idea of wanting to apply, right? But then you get into the application mode and it's tough, right? I mean, we can all be honest, like there's parts of MBA applications that are difficult. I think it's a lot of self-reflection is what we hear, right? It's a lot of people, if they don't want to share too much about themselves, all of a sudden you have to be an open book, right? So did anybody find the application process to be difficult? And then if so, like what was difficult in that process and how'd you overcome that? Kind of like a three-parter possibly. Yeah, go ahead.
I think for me, the most challenging part was probably the GMAT or GRE, which is the one that I made. Yeah, it was definitely different from the content that I had seen in undergrad. So I first tried to do it by myself and wasn't very successful at it, and then got help, and that was great and very beneficial. So highly recommend that. And the part that you're saying, maybe at the beginning it's so comfortable to be introspective and think a lot about it, but when you realize it's the only time in your life when you're actually stopping and thinking what you want and where you're going to go, you can give it that lens, and it's really nice, and it can give you a lot.
That's a great perspective. Yeah. So you brought up the testing question, right? So quick, since we have 5 folks here, right? So how many ended up submitting a GRE? Okay. How many ended up submitting a GMAT? And then did you two have a waiver or did you have a different test?
Executive assessment.
I had a
Assessment,
waiver.
okay. And a waiver. And was the waiver because of the master's degree?
Yeah, so I had some quantitative experience because of the MBA, but also work experience.
Really cool. Okay, so we cover 3 tests and a waiver. That's awesome. Out of 5 people. That is, we didn't plan for that. That's just great to see. Okay. And everyone's at awesome schools. Cool stuff. And then okay, great. So anyone else want to share their story about the application process? Yeah, Chisholm, go ahead.
Yeah, I can. So for me, the application overall, like I thought it was okay, but what I did struggle with a bit, at least for Duke specifically, was their 25 things essay. I think a lot of the essays at the other schools are very similar, but the 25 things essay is one that's specific and unique to Duke. So for that one, like knowing that it was something that they look into heavily, I really wanted to make sure that it was good. So it took me a while I started like writing notes in my phone about different random things about me, and then sourcing it with people, and trying to like really make sure that that essay was good. So I think that was just probably the essay I put the most work into. So probably the most challenging for me.
Really cool. And a little more right background on that. So 25 things about you, it's just any 25 things that you think would be important to share with the committee, right? So it could be anything
exactly.
personal, professional, hobbies, interests. Yeah.
Exactly. And it really is more so leaning on the personal part than it is the professional piece. Because, you have your resume, you have other parts of the essay. So it really is leaning more towards on, getting to know you as a person and like what makes you unique as an individual.
Really cool. Yeah, that is a very unique essay. And some schools now, I've noticed they're starting to copy it slightly here and there. So it is becoming a kind of unique type of thing that schools are noticing, which is awesome. Anybody else want to share yeah, Alex, go ahead.
Yeah. I think, there was a comment earlier about this time being like a self-reflection moment. And I think Daniela said you actually don't actually get that many times to do that. So take advantage of it. One thing that I struggled with when I was going through that exercise was thinking about like what were the key pieces of work or school that really got me excited, got me passionate in a way that you communicate that to the admissions committee. And one thing that was helpful for me was to talk through that with like supervisors or family and friends who see you from a different perspective and can offer that additional perspective as you work through that reflection.
Yeah, it's a great point. Kind of having like your little MBA application village, right? It's not, it doesn't have to be a personal, on your own individual journey. You kind of can lean on some folks. Did you share essays that you wrote with friends and colleagues and family or things like that?
Certainly outlines of essays
Yeah.
or arcs of stories that I wanted to
Yeah.
tell.
Yeah, that's helpful. Yeah, I know I've heard some folks sometimes will recommend, if an essay prompt is kind of tough, right? They'll say, write the essay, share it with somebody who who you trust, and just ask them if they can figure out what the prompt was, right? Because some of these schools, like the prompt sometimes really confuses people and you almost overthink it. And it doesn't have to be that complicated. And you have a word limit, and there's just a lot of complications. So yeah, using those folks that are close to you for different things, right? You'll need them for recommendations sometimes, but also just kind of bouncing ideas and prepping for different things. That's really great. Jennifer, what do you got?
I wanted to build on something Alex mentioned. It's,
Yeah.
as you're reflecting, you often feel like you have to have this one story, one answer, and you think this is permanent. Like, this is what I'll do for the rest of my life. And that was a little tough for me, right? And when I realized and gave myself permission to recognize that it didn't have to be the way, that I could change, redirect at any point, as I did with my internship and post grad, and will continue to do even in years to come. I think it really gave me a lot more peace in embracing where I was. And so here's my story. Here's what I envision long term. Here's what I know now and what I'm passionate about. And so I think taking the time to, whether it's kind of revisiting the drafts you have for your essays, will be key, or thinking, I know I'm married and I talked a lot about my essay brainstorm to see if my story made sense with my husband. And it was like late into the evenings as we were watching TV, pause the show. And we did this several nights. And I probably talked his head off too much, but it helped me find my story. And so I think being kind to yourself and allowing yourself grace to find your story with where you are and knowing that it can change.
And that's a story of a great partner too, who is going through school with you, whether they wanted to or not. And I appreciate great partner stories like that. And a point you kind of bring up there too, and I may have just lost in my own head here as I'm thinking through it. Oh, yeah, when your story changes, right? So this is kind of like maybe leaning on like a post MBA question for later in the session, but for the alums in the room, right? Sometimes there's essays or there's portions of the application at the way beginning where you have to say, this is what I want to do post MBA. Did you stick to that? Like, now, are you in roles that you wrote in those essays back in the day? You can, yes, no, I don't know, maybe.
I think
Yeah.
for me, it was very funny because immediately after the MBA, I didn't stick to that initial thing. But lately, I've been reflecting on those like original values that I had and the things that I wrote. And I do think that was very essential to who I am and what brings me joy. So maybe in the future, I will explore going back to that. So maybe it's not that crazy once you write it.
But it does, but see, so your paths change and you're okay, right? So the joke we have sometimes is
Yeah.
like, when you graduate from these programs, do they pull out those essays and they say, oh, wait a second, you were going into consulting and you're not going
Not
into
at
consulting, so
all.
you don't get this diploma. Like, no, right? Like, you can change your mind 100 times. So I think that's key. We have a lot of folks on our site when they're applying and they're trying to put together those post MBA types of essays, they get very stressed out about, I need to get this exactly right. It's got to be half the folks probably aren't even near what they wrote, and it's fine. Like, that's the point. You have 2 years to like explore this stuff. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that, especially the exploring. Mine was kind of in line. I said I wanted to go into impact investing because I have a finance background. So I'm very social impact forward. That was great. I'm like, this is going to be awesome. I landed in consulting, like a lot of people do post MBA. But a lot of the way that I got to that decision was by exploring in school and like talking to people that are in impact investing and trying to see if that actually did align with my short-term goals. And the more I talked to professors and took those classes, I was like, oh, this is not for me, or at least right now. And I feel like what I needed short-term out of school was actually building up my toolkit before jumping into a potential investing role. So school helped me experiment with that.
Makes a lot of sense. I mean, and consulting kind of opens up doors for a lot of different areas. So that's a great way to explore that as well. So you're still exploring, and that's great. And that's fine. And you should be doing that. That's awesome. Daniela, do you have anything else there?
I just wanted to add, I think what they really want to see with that question is more what's your why, and if it's consistent across the decisions you've taken since what did you study, why do you want to go to this business school, and why do you want to pursue that career? So I think that they're looking for that more consistency more than the actual job description. That doesn't matter as much.
Yeah, it's a great tip and a great point. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. All right, cool. So that's the toughest parts, right? But now the fun parts. So you get through the tough application, right? And you get to pick a program. How many of you did you all apply to multiple schools? No, Chizoma, good for you. Were you early action? No, okay, very cool. So let's start with you then. So you chose to apply to one school and you went to that school. So tell us that, how did you decide to do that?
Yeah.
Did you just know you were getting in, or did you like just, that was,
No,
it was
I
super bust?
did something very dangerous. I mean, I knew that. So for me, like
Not that
I
dangerous.
just made, I had just made manager and consulting. And so at the time when I was going to business school, it really was a like, I could succeed in consulting without going to business school. And so I knew for me, like I wanted to go to the program that I felt like would be the best for me, and that I resonated with the most. And I attended Duke's MBA workshop, which happens every year, the weekend before Thanksgiving. So if you are interested in applying to Duke, I would definitely apply to that program. And that's what gave me like insight into the program. And I knew that Fuqua was where I wanted to be. So I was going to apply like to other schools as backup, but because I was working consulting and it was very rigorous at the time, like I just did not have the time, which is also why I like ended up opting for the executive assessment as well, because just timing wasn't going to work out if I was going to enter business school. And then I'm also sponsored by the firm. I was at Deloitte prior and they were sponsoring me for business school. And there was a timeline on that as well. So for that reason, I just like had to go with my gut and pray that things worked out for Duke, and it did. But Duke was my top choice. And so I just lucked out and I got it. So
I love it. That's a great story. Oh, and that's a great story for Duke too. So I will have to write to our friends at Duke and say, you guys sent us someone awesome. That's a great story. Really cool stuff. And it all makes sense, right? EA, and it's a different experience testing wise. It is a little faster and to prepare for, definitely. Which is great. So that all makes sense. So anyone else have like a different story, right? So did anyone else have to choose between schools? How did you make that choice? Did you have a favorite? Did you not have a favorite? Does anyone want to share? Yeah.
Yeah, I can go. I was choosing between 3 schools, and I think a lot of them were actually just very impact focused, Duke being one of them. And I love that essay so much. It was probably not even an essay, but that list of questions was my favorite thing by far. But ultimately, Tuck stood out to me because I felt like it was the place where I would be, this might sound a little dysfunctional, but the most uncomfortable and the place where I would grow the most. It was the most unfamiliar to me, but also the place where I felt like I could be like in a safe space to learn. So it was ultimately coming down to talking to the current students, and being very blunt about like, hey, here's what I want to do after MBA. Here's where I think I need to grow. You know, where do you think you can see me in your school? And Tuck, I just felt like this pull and this gravitational support and just the greatest people. So that's what helped me, is really connecting with people.
Very nice. And so the uncomfortable, was that because of location of Dartmouth, or was that, yeah, okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's
Makes
a
sense.
mix. All of these schools are in very different parts of the country. The class size is one of the smallest across the top business schools. It's also very remote. It's 3 hours from a major airport. And so it really forces you to be present. And that's something that I think I needed. If I was going to spend this money in business school, I wanted to make sure that I was really being honest with myself about the value.
Yeah, no, it makes a ton of sense. And it actually is, some people think of it differently, but I think it is a pro of Dartmouth as well, is that because it's a little bit more remote than other schools in a big city, it's like you are there for school, like you know what you're there for. You're not there to be distracted by other things. And for some folks, like that is super helpful, and you can get a good experience because you are focusing on like what you're there for, the task at hand, right? So that's, and this time of the year, it's beautiful up there. I mean, Daniela has the picture of the foliage, but I'm sure we could have a fight there between who has the foliage domination this time of the year. Okay. Anyone else want to share a story? Yeah, Jennifer.
Yeah, I'm happy to share. So I had a slightly strange way of narrowing down my schools. I wasn't sure I wanted to go back to school to begin with, but my husband actually, his cousin was part of consortium, and he's like, well, we started thinking about school. I really thought about law school, but then he said, have you know, there's consortium. It's a way of getting scholarship opportunity. And so I looked into it, and then I realized, well, there's 3 weeks until the deadline. So I got on the phone, spoke to an admissions counselor for member school, and it was just such a positive interaction. And I kid you not, within 30 minutes, I reached out to a consortium member from that school. I hadn't even applied, and they were so willing to speak with me. And so I think that's the one thing that gravitated me towards business school and consortium, just feeling like I would have the support and community to go through the application process. But then what I did from there in terms of narrowing down the schools I would apply for was identifying schools that had a dual degree program. So that law and business degree, I wasn't sure if and what I would do, but I knew that I wanted to have the option. And with the deadlines coming up so quickly, I decided apply now, decide later, right? And I, was working until last few minutes before the deadline through consortium, which was in January, and ended up kind of narrowing it that way. And now the last piece for me was also because I decided to apply so late, so close to the deadline, I didn't have the time to take the GRE, the GMAT, or anything. And so for me, the waiver, being able to obtain that in time was key. It was super busy those 1-2 weeks that I had, honestly. But where there's a will, there's a way. I was also working. It was an incredibly busy time. And so it did feel like working a full-time and part-time, and then having everything else on top of that. Waking up early, late nights, working on essays and everything. But it was worth it. And so I ended up at CMU specifically because in the end, something as much of being a bigger city ended up playing a factor. Like, I'm married, and I realized I want to be immersed in my experience in the community and the cohort, but I also need my husband to feel like he can find a place in his community. And so having a place for a partner, like a partners club, how inclusive they were, and being in a city where I felt like we would both, or he would be able to explore, ended up being important for me. And strangely, actually the opposite of what Frazia was saying. I kind of wanted to be closer to an airport coming from DC. And my family was in another city. I needed kind of that access. It's always been a factor for us. And so, eventually I think it all worked out the way it's supposed to, and I'm really pleased. I wouldn't change it otherwise.
It's great. This is why these sessions are great though, right? Because like you're both at great schools, 2 totally different reasons to be there, different schools, different types of schools. It all works out well. This is good stuff. Anybody else want to share in this section before I move through to the next question? Okay, so going through the admissions process, right? And then we'll move on to more like post MBA or current MBA stuff as well. But if you were back again, like sitting through this process, do you have a piece of advice you wish you would have heard? Like if you were to come to this session 2 years ago, a year ago, whatever it may be, what's that one thing you could have told yourself at that time that would have really made it easier for you to go through everything? I think I know some answers maybe, right? Like go find stuff about consortium earlier, and that may be something you're going to say, and that's fine. This could be the talk through what consortium is, talk through MLT. That's all good. Chizoma, go ahead. You can start.
Yeah, I would have 2 things. So one is do not stress over these exams. I think people stress way too much over testing, and honestly, it all works out. I know, especially from people who come from underrepresented backgrounds, it's something that, that we can sometimes struggle with. And I think I'm here to say, like, do not worry about it. Like, it all works out, whether it's a GRE, whether it's the EA, whether it's a GMAT, like it will work out. And all of these schools are looking at your applications holistically for the most part. So your test score for the most part is not going to make or break you. So I would say that definitely, I think that I was really stressed, especially when I decided to do the EA versus taking a GRE, GMAT. I'm like, am I really messing up my chances of getting into school here? It gave me a lot of anxiety around that piece. And I think I would have stressed less. And then secondly, like I would just say, like, making sure that you're really like taking time for yourself through the application process. As like Jennifer was saying, it's very easy to get very busy and bogged down, and this becomes like a part-time job, you know, when you're like looking at business schools, visiting business schools and going through this long journey. Like it is a journey, and you just have to give yourself time and give yourself breaks and really take time for yourself through the process. So I think that I would have also done that more.
Really cool. And I'm glad you're here to share your story about taking executive assessment and those types of things, because I think sometimes people hear about testing or see, you know, GMAT. It's like there are options. I mean, and even having, you know, Jennifer's experience with having a test waiver, like you're getting into good schools. Like these are options that are out there. Explore those options, read through these websites. Yeah, there's plenty of pathways into these schools. So yes, thank you for sharing that. Yes, go ahead.
Mike, I also want to add, especially because we're on the topic of waivers, you'd be surprised at how many schools, like even Ivy League schools, offer waivers. And so my one piece of advice would be ask, right? Whether it, and
Yeah.
along with asking, take the chance, right? There's so many schools that I didn't apply, and then realizing, like, I had a safety schools and a few that felt like reach schools. And I think when I got my first one, I was like, wow, I really did get into the school. Even if I don't get into any of the other schools, I'm going to business school. I was really sold in to the idea. And I kept getting more admissions, and there was one school where I wasn't admitted. And, you know, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter how many schools you accept, because you'll only be able to go to one, right? And similar to when we're recruiting, it doesn't matter how many interviews you get, how many offers you get. It just takes one yes, and it's one yes that you have to give to. So I think put yourself out there, reach, dream, right? Don't limit yourself to what you think you are capable or able to get into. Try it all. And I know the financial piece for applications, but there are so many ways to even get application waivers or through consortium to get slightly reduced fees in terms of applying. And since we briefly mentioned consortium, it's an organization, I think heavily focused on increasing representation across corporate America ultimately, and in business schools specifically. And so you have a way of kind of accessing early recruiting opportunities for interviews, for internships, for jobs. You get mentorship, you get access to conferences where you get to interview, but above all, you also in some cases get scholarship support, which is one of the biggest challenges and barriers to even business school for some people of color. And so I'm really grateful for it. I've met some incredible people for it. These spaces I've been able to access because of the consortium have been incredibly empowering. And it's changed my trajectory even to what I did this summer. And so you just put yourself out there and ask. The worst that can happen is they say no, and you just keep trudging and asking the next person knocking on the next door.
I love it. Yeah, dream big, right? And consortium, one last plug for them, because they are continuing to add more and more member schools every single year. So it is growing and growing and growing. Many of the, if not all of the top 30 schools at this point, I think are members are going to be members probably in the next 2-3 years. So yeah, it's only growing, which is just benefiting the organization overall, the ability for them to do more things, more folks that are involved, the more networking that can come out of it. So it's awesome. Yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say yes. I mean, Duke historically was not part of the consortium, but we recently joined the consortium this year. So this is our first full year in the consortium. And I mean, we're excited about it. It's definitely, I think, will help us overall. I know that was a deciding factor for a lot of people when choosing between Duke and other schools. So yeah, Duke is not part of the consortium.
There you go. All right.
I did want to add a component that Jennifer sparked. Something that I always tell prospective students, and something that I wish I told Frecia 2-3 years ago, or that people were just more honest about, is how expensive business school can be beyond the cost of tuition that they show on paper, right? So not just like, okay, great, I'm going to take out a loan for the tuition, but socializing, which is absolutely 100% part of the business school experience, is also incredibly expensive. And I think that's something that people need to be more upfront about. I wish I had told myself, or someone told me what that magic number was, so that I could save, right? Maybe I would have delayed business school another year so that I could be very honest with myself about how comfortable I could be with my finances, especially coming out now, right? Like my loans just hit my credit score. And that was it's just the reality of it. It's a pretty bill at the end of the day. And I come from a low income first gen background. Seeing that bill was like, oh my God, how am I going to do this? Thankfully, there's a job at the end that can help me pay for it. But talk to people about how much they're actually spending on these trips, on applications, on socializing, because it's also a big part of it.
Great tips. One plug I'll make, and this is not a clear MIT plug, but a partner of ours called Juno, who does financial lending, but also does a lot of sessions. One of those sessions is actually about that exact topic of what else do you pay for when you're in business school, and how can you actually budget for that? They are a great organization. They have really low interest rates for their private loans. So one that we will plug all the time. We have info on our site, but it's JUNO if you're looking up stuff. They do refi too, fresh. Yeah, so if you need them for that. Oh, there you go. Vic sharing it in the chat because we do have a page to them if you are interested in learning more about financial aid type stuff. But that is a huge piece of that. And those webinars, I think, for them pop up usually in like December and then again in March as round one, and then round two decisions come out because they want to make sure people understand what they're in for before they get to the end. So yeah, great topic to bring up. I'm glad you mentioned that. Daniela, Alex, anything you want to, yeah.
Yeah, I wanted also to say I applied to Darden as a future year scholar, which is a deferred application program. And I think not a lot of people know about this. So if any of you is still early and straight out of undergrad, definitely look at deferred program admissions because it will take a lot of stress out of you for the following years before actually starting business school. And the second thing that I wanted to say is don't be afraid to ping people from that school, like on LinkedIn, just to chat. I think getting like an actual sense of the community and how people are enjoying the program and if they think it's worth it, etc., is very important. And I think back then I was super scared of taking space or taking someone else's time. And definitely, I think it's a good idea.
Yeah, I was going to say exactly that
Yeah.
same thing.
Sorry.
And I would add actually not just current students, but like former students who are like yourself and Frecia, who are active professionals, because those folks have a view, obviously, of what you can do with that degree and how you can navigate the school to get there.
Awesome. Yeah, great tips there. And Daniela, for future scholars, so just to push that a little more. So there's deferred enrollment types of programs, right? So this is a program you applied to while you were an undergrad, right? But then you deferred that enrollment for a few years.
Yeah, I applied, I think 2 months after I graduated. So I was not in undergrad, but I definitely studied my last semester for the GMAT, which was hard, but at least you get it done fast.
That's right. While you're in school mode, right? And then how long was your deferment? 2 years or 3 years?
3.
3 years, right?
Yeah.
So for folks that are, if you're still in school or you recently graduated, there are all those types of programs that you can look into that you can enter sooner. You don't have to wait the 2-3 years of working. You could be applying into those programs now, and then kind of you sit while you work, or you gain your experience after you've already been admitted. You have your seat waiting for you in a few years, and you join the program. So we cover those programs. We have an event for those programs as well, which we can share in the chat. And Vic already did that because Vic is amazing. And if I didn't have Vic here, I would lose my head. So, okay. So if you're interested in those types of programs and you're of that demographic, still in school or just recently finished, you can join us for one of those events. So moving then into the next section, and this is a fun one because I'm going to let you all just talk about your school, right? So how'd you pick your school? You all told us, but now you're there or you were there and you graduated. Like, why should anybody who's in this session pick your school? And why should they not pick? No, not that part, but why should they pick your school? What's something cool that you did there or that you really enjoyed? Something that might be maybe a little more unique that you can't just read on the website. I don't know. Just give us something really cool and we can go around to everyone. Whoever wants to kick us off, welcome to it. Oh, no one wants to. I can talk about my school. Okay. Jennifer, I saw you first.
Sure. I think for Tepper specifically, someone mentioned this earlier, and is a smaller cohort. I think that was really important for me, not only for the faculty to student ratio, which, it's easy to claim for some, but more so because I felt like I could find a place to contribute to and be active and a community member. And for me specifically, like I felt at Tepper, like there were Latino students. I'm Colombian, first generation, born in New York, raised in North Carolina. And for me, I've been very involved in the Black and Brown community, like uplifting people into higher education space. And so for me, I recognize that as I was preparing for corporate America, big pivot for me. I wanted to feel like I was supported and I could be myself authentically. And I found that at Tepper, there were so many other schools that are just as incredible. But I think follow your gut, like putting myself out there, visiting the school, having the Latino community at Tepper was huge. The technical aspect, like I know walking through the Short Center, which really focuses on entrepreneurship and the incredible tools, resources that they have available. And along with that, I think it's also the MCC, the Master's Career Center, was huge. The one thing that they told me, which differed them from other schools, it was really, you can have a plan. We want you to have a plan. But if you're not willing to kind of step outside of that comfort and try something new, something different, then Tepper might not be the right school for you. And that's what differentiated the school. Like I sat there, they were the only school that was kind of almost saying, this might not be right for you if you're not open. And that was the moment where I felt like maybe it was really worth entertaining. And what closed the deal for me was really the Partners Club. It was super inclusive. Even when I went to Welcome Weekend, they had an identifier for here's what partners get to join with the prospective or admitted student. And here are other sessions that they organize for the partners. Even if they were simple, kind of like team building, walking around campus, it was meaningful for me because these are things that motivated me to go back to school. I'm not just in school to bump my salary, right? And to continue growing. Sure, that's a big part of who I am and what I dedicate my time to. But I'm doing it because I want a quality of life. And that life is with people I love, including my husband, my immediate family. And so it's a lot of little factors. I think Tepper has met every bit and surprised me in so many ways. I'm so grateful for the consortium cohort and support that I've had. I didn't necessarily always feel like I fit right in at the beginning, but I think it's just because it's a new space, new people, and it just takes time. I think again, that part of what I said earlier, be kind to yourself. And I think there's so many great schools that it's not about competition. It's simply about finding the right fit for you. And so take the time to reach out to students, reach out to admissions counselors and ask them, hey, I'm interested in talking to someone in this industry. Can you connect me? And can you connect me to alumni? Because the alumni are important. And I know Tepper's alumni were willing to speak with me. And so that to me proved to me that when I was recruiting, they would be there to lend a hand.
When you said New York, I heard the New York accent earlier, but I didn't say it. I wasn't going to call you out. I grew up on Long Island, so I can hear it. Who wants to go next? Cool stuff about your school. Sell us on it. Go ahead, Alex. New York City. So that's a good transition.
Yeah.
There you go. What do you got?
I felt that was the only
You took
appropriate.
that.
And actually, so I'll give two answers. The first is actually New York. And so more specifically, right? Like I worked in private equity before school. I'll be going into private equity after school as well. And for that industry, New York is really, an important city for that. And more specifically, it gives you just going to Columbia and being in the center of it all. You're able to do in-semester internships, which at least for my industry is really important from a recruitment standpoint, and opportunities that I never would have had over the summer, for example, are available off cycle. And so that is just one of a large handful of benefits about being in New York that Columbia Business School can speak to. And for everyone on the webinar who is thinking about applying to Columbia, that's definitely a case to make, is around New York. And then the second thing is around the international student body, and that was sort of the other leg of my application story and finding a way to work in my industry, but internationally and maybe in parts of the developing world. And Columbia has one of the most international student bodies. The cool thing about business school in general is that all of these schools have really international student bodies, but Columbia, just because of location, makes it a really easy choice, I think, for a lot of folks who are applying from abroad. So that was something that was really exciting when I came here.
Awesome. Speaking of cost of business school, they didn't include Yankees World Series tickets in that, did they? When they gave you that?
Exactly.
So $1,000 for standing room only? That's okay, cool. So anyone else want to talk about their school? It should be like a fun one. Yeah.
It's fun. It's so fun. So I'll go quickly for Tuck. It is in the middle of nowhere, but I have very big plugs for it. I think one, the small tight-knit community really pays off, and two, the alumni network now benefiting from it. So your first year at Tuck, you're very likely to live in the dorms, and that was huge for me. I feel like at this point graduating, I know every single one of my graduating class members by name, and that is because of the small community that we've been able to foster. I talk to one of my professors every 6 weeks. He's decided, hey, I want to mentor you. I loved you in the classroom. There's the case that I'm on right now with BCG. The partner somehow is connected to Tuck and is working with one of my professors and knew me by name. And it's just helped me threefold, just immense. And then to the alumni community, I just moved to Seattle. I know no one in Seattle. And I was wearing this sweater, walking around Seattle. In a week, 3 different Tuck alumni came up to me and said, "Oh my God, what year are you?" And I don't think because it's Tuck and because it's so unique, that there's someone who knows what it's like to be at that school and that community. So it was just this immediate connection, and it didn't have to be this transactional LinkedIn post situation. It was just a care for the school that you went to and pride. So those are the 2 quick plugs for Tuck.
Just writing something down because I almost want to say Tuck, if you know, you know what I mean? It's we've been there. We went out into the wilderness and studied together, and we've done it.
I guess you can
one of
call it
those
trauma bonding, but yeah.
Yeah, you just have that. You did the 2-year trip there too, huh? You did summer camp at Tuck, yeah. It's almost like that kind of, it's a little special bond you all have. That's pretty cool. Daniela, I saw you come off. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think Darden is a very similar setting as Tuck. We often joke that it's like the twin schools. Additional to what Fresia said, I would say that something that I never thought even about, but once I was there was incredible, is how beautiful Charlottesville is. It's just next to the Shenandoah National Park. So a lot of our activities were outdoors and in vineyards, and that made the community a little bit healthier, I would say, that what I've heard from other experiences. So yeah, I mean how strong the community is definitely the biggest thing for me, and the alumni network as well.
Class. For me, I talk about 3 things. So first, it was the community for me that brought me to Duke at first. So Duke has such a strong community at, we say Team Fuqua, but I'll tell a story at the end about why I feel like that's it's at the heart of Duke. But the students, Duke does a really good job of handcrafting the people that attend in a way that keeps the Team Fuqua environment going and really fosters collaborative learning that really helps in your internships and post-grad and through the rest of your lifetime. So that was part of the reason why, along with the strong alumni base and seeing how they invest in each other's businesses, they're partners on so many different things together. Even though you're only in business school for 2 years, you really are a Fuqua alum for life, and the alumni community really takes care of you. And so that was a really big thing for me. But while being at Fuqua, what really solidified Duke for me was that, so I had a health challenge this year. I was actually diagnosed with cancer in January. And so I had to go through chemo radiation treatment while in business school. And the way that Duke, administration, my classmates, everyone around, even people who barely knew me, rallied around me, visited me in the hospital, brought me stuff, financed things for me. I just don't think I could have gotten the level of support that I did at any other business program, the way that they did. I think that I could have gotten it from my classmates, but the way that the administration took care of me, my professors, all of that, I just don't think that I would have gotten that anywhere else. And I do think that that's just the heart of Fuqua, with the decency quotient and really highlighting ethical responsibility and doing the right thing, and really having people there who believe in that. I really think is what carries Duke as a unique place. And I think that the admissions team really does a great job of figuring out who will really contribute well to the Team Fuqua environment, who wants to come and build collaboration. We do a lot of team bonding events. They'll take us to different obstacle courses and other things to do to make us build team camaraderie. And a lot of people, especially coming out of their internships from my second years, were Team Fuqua really set us apart from, other programs. So at least for me, that's the biggest thing for me in Duke that I can push is that Team Fuqua really is a real thing. And I think that, the way that they've supported me, I don't think I would have gotten that anywhere else.
I don't know what to say fully to that, but I appreciate you sharing that. I hope you're doing okay. And I love that you felt that support from your school and the school community. And that's fantastic. And it's an inspiring story. So thank you so much for doing what you're doing. It's awesome. And where you're joining us from. Now you can share, let's share some fun stuff too. 'Cause
Yeah,
I
so
see this
fun
on
stuff.
social
So
media.
on the more fun part of business school, Fresia was right in that travel is so expensive. So we're on fall break right now. So like over 30 of us are in Cabo right now for fall break. So that's where I'm calling from. And just so many other things planned. I was telling Mike at the end of the call, like for December, I'm going to Seoul and Japan with class for spring break. I'm doing Southeast Asia, going to Thailand, Vietnam, Cambodia, Laos, Bali, and Singapore with business school. And so when Fresca says it's expensive and there's a lot that you have to finance outside of just, your day to day, it's really true. These trips are expensive and they are part of the experience. You really build camaraderie with your classmates. You really get to know people at a deeper level. And these are the people who you will then be, working with after here and hopefully maybe investing in your business or, working with you on a project or a case and consulting, So it is so important to at least try to go on a few. Don't have to go on all of them, but at least try to do something with your classmates and off campus, that's not in your daily area.
And just remember, every time one of you goes on a trip, one of you will randomly be chosen to do one of these events while you're there. So just keep that in mind as you plan your vacations. No, that's awesome. And that is a great part of it, making those bonds, forming those relationships, because as we go into this next part here, it's important. It's important to make those connections. It's important to stay in touch with folks, because when you are looking for those jobs post MBA, the more of a network that you have, the more that you reach out and speak with people, as Jennifer even said, right? Don't be afraid to just reach out to folks. And a couple other folks have been saying too, like go on LinkedIn and just send your notes out there, right? So the question I would have for you all is, you're all at different stages of this process, right? Some have graduated now and have roles. Some are in between years here. Tell us about the career services at large, right? Your experience with it. Has the school been helpful to you in finding opportunities, whether it's internships or post MBA roles? Has it been more like people that you met on the side? Has it been more from these social groups that you've joined? Like, tell us your thoughts on what it really takes to get yourself back out of business school, right? So we talk about how to get in. How do you get yourself out and be successful in that process? It's a loaded part here, but I'm sure somebody can kick us off. Oh, I saw two at the same time. So rock, paper,
Danielle
scissors.
can go. Danielle
Okay.
can go.
It's gonna be quick. I think at Darden, they have a very structured program for career services. If you are thinking of more traditional paths, so I'm thinking consulting, investment banking, general management, or tech. And I think there's three main resources. That is what made the deal for me. The first one is the actual career center. That is like these professionals, and there's one person specialized by industry that will coach you, will help you with your resume, etc. The second one that was huge for me is we get assigned a second year coach. So it's a second year who just went through your same recruiting process. And this person for me was like an angel, and he's still my mentor. And he actually works at BCG where I work at right now. And it's this person that cases you the whole time. It's day to day following up. Like he even helped me write emails to recruiters. Like it's very hands-on. And the third resource that is very important as well is like the student-led groups. So we had the consulting club, and they organize actually. I wouldn't be in fall break because they organize like a fall boot camp for consulting, and they teach you all the basics and how to be good at it. So yeah, it's super robust in case you want to do more traditional industries. And I think that's a very important factor to choose your school as well, to see where alumni work.
Yeah. Yeah, Giselle, yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that. And then also, I think like majority of the business programs have like a formalized career center. And I think a lot of us similarly have people, you know, by industry that will help us through. Duke also has like I'm a career fellow, which is what we call ours. So helping first years with their internship. But I also wanted to plug like outside of like the formalized career center and career management programs. We talked a little bit earlier about consortium giving pre-recruiting opportunities. MLT also has their professional development program, which is where I like secured my summer internship through. So once you actually get into business school, you can apply to MLT professional development, which will then help you get an internship over the summer, which is great because you can walk into, same with consortium, you can walk into business school and already have, you know, your internship secured. So I also just wanted to plug that, but, you know, outside of the formal resources that all of our schools would offer, like there are still internship opportunities outside of that. I know Twigo for finance also has opportunities as well. So I wanted to plug that.
Awesome. Good stuff. Did anyone just raise their hand do a pre-MBA internship? So do an internship before you joined. No, that sometimes comes up. Okay. Yeah, Jennifer, go ahead.
I echo the there are so many factors, but consortium was huge for the early recruiting. So I mentioned I did hire at a nonprofit before my MBA. And this summer, when I actually wrote my admissions essay, I said I'll do anything but IB, investment banking. And that's actually what I did this summer. I was with Wells Fargo, working as a summer associate within investment banking. And other than one piece of advice there is just keep an open mind, right? Never say no to anything. Keep an open mind. But I think what really allowed me to pivot, and I will not be going back into investment banking. For me, it was really to test it out to see if it was something I could see myself doing. I'll actually be going to next era post graduation into the renewable space. And so slight pivot made sense for my admissions essay at the time, strangely. But I think 4 buckets, the early recruiting is huge, to the opportunities. The MCC, the Master's Career Center, for me was incredible for the pivot. I had an incredible coach, Jackie. I have to give her a shout out every single time because not only did she empower me, but she really prepared me. And she was like, Jenny, if you put in the work, you'll really get out of it what you want. And it was tough. It was difficult. But I also had the support of my second years, right? So the student body was huge. And we did that through a structured preparation with what we call GFA, the Graduate Finance Association. And so investment banking, it's not necessarily what CMU Tepper is known for, but we have such an incredibly structured process, boot camp, treks, and so much more that works very closely with the MCC and with our alumni, who I think would close it off for me. It's that if you don't have alumni who are engaged, it kind of weakens your experience or overall, but kind of the weight of your degree in the school you go to. And so I think all hand in hand works together to make it a smoother process and success post-grad.
Great stuff.
I can jump
Alex.
into
Yeah.
Columbia real quick, and I'll be quick because I think everything that was already mentioned is also a resource at Columbia. I will just speak quickly to some of the non-traditional paths, and for me that's obviously investing, but you see it also in startups and things like that, and the resource that Columbia does a really good job of developing is company relationships for some of those paths that are non-traditional. And the reason it's so important is because those companies have alums and relationship with the school, but they may not be coming on campus all the time, or they haven't in the past. And so the school goes to sort of extra lengths to set up information sessions with select alums at those companies, and sort of goes the extra mile to facilitate engagement between the students and the firms.
Awesome. Lots of great stuff here. Fresh, anything to add? You don't have to.
Oh, it's okay. No, I honestly echo everything that everybody has said. I did early recruiting, which helped me a lot. And I think that's something that has evolved and is continuing to evolve, like how companies are engaging in it. Not all of them have to be through consortium or MLT, because I know that sometimes there's requirements of like citizenship and things of that nature, but that's not the case for a lot of consulting firms. Bain has Bain Base. There's McKinsey Inspire BCG Empower, which is how I got through BCG. So just do your homework. That's also part of the fun. Once you get into school, I immediately got into early recruiting. So that's something to mentally prepare for.
Yeah, the journey never stops, right? Okay, so to be respectful of time, we're at the bottom of the hour or the top of the hour, I guess, of the the end of our session here. Is there anything else you want to share? Because if you want to like get something off your chest, you came to this session, you volunteered your time, which we really appreciate, but you were really hoping to say one last thing. I want to make sure everyone has that moment to do that. If not, I will wrap up. So does anyone have any last minute advice or tips or thoughts that they wanted to share before we close? Giselle, go ahead.
I just want to wish everyone luck in this process. Like it just takes time. It takes courage to leave your job and go to business school for 2 years. Like it's not easy. So definitely like good luck in this process. And like as I said before, give yourself time and space to like do this in a healthy way and really don't let the application process like stress you out. And also like make sure you just like pick a program that's really for you. I think sometimes like people can get caught up in like, okay, well, I want like the school to be in the top 5, or I want school to be in the top 10 or the top 30. And I think people can get really caught up in those things. And I think really it boils down to understanding like, do you mesh with the people there? Do you connect with the alumni? Can you see yourself living in that city? Like questions like that, and less of questions around like where the school falls within the rankings. So that's just all I wanted to say, is to really, think critically about your decisions, because even though you're in the school for 2 years, you're alumni of the institution for life. So make the best decision for yourself.
Really great tips. I love actually that this full panel made it a full hour until they had to mention the word rankings, which is amazing because we actually usually asked that question earlier, but nobody brought it up. Nobody, when we talked about why'd you pick a school or what made your list, like none of you mentioned rankings at all as part of those decisions. So I find that great because I personally also believe like you should make your own ranking of schools, because I don't know what US News is like. They're not the best pick for what I'm looking to do. Like, and you're all looking to do different things too. And, so that's really good advice. I love that. Anything else? I don't know if
I'd love a short
Yeah.
one. Take a chance, immerse yourself, and lean into the people around you, the resources. And that goes for the recruiting or the application process, the recruiting for internship, post-graduation. And post-graduation, you're once a part of the community, you're always a part of it. It is what you make of it. And so lean into all of it, and good luck to everyone.
Yeah. Yeah. Immersive, right? Fully immerse yourself. You get to be a student again. It's fun. Like it's, back to school. Treat it as such. Join those clubs, go to those extra sessions, go to the guest speaker, like whatever it is. It's good. You don't get those chances all the time. So all right. I don't see anyone else gearing to say anything, so I'll wrap here. I really appreciate the 5 of you jumping in and volunteering your time to, especially from Cabo as well. But all of your time coming from all the places that you're all sitting to share all this great advice. I mean, honestly, these sessions are really awesome for our team, just because first off, we get to meet really cool people, and I think the 5 of you did an amazing job sharing your stories. But also it helps us really connect with current applicants and showing them all like, hey, like you can do this, right? So I think even these sentiments towards the end here of jump in with 2 feet, you can do this, you will get into a school, you have great opportunities at said school, like this is a good move to do this, right? Like you're not going to regret the decision of going to business school. So so do it, right? There's always a million reasons to not do something. Just go and do it. Like if you're thinking about it at all, hearing from folks like this, like I'm inspired to go do it and I'm not allowed to. So, so that's that. So thank you all again for spending some time. For those of you who missed the beginning of the session or have friends that want to watch this video later, it was recorded. We will send this link out. It'll be present on our YouTube page as well. So if people are asking you, man, what was up with that event? I want to hear those great folks. Like we will send you the link and share it with all your friends and family. So thanks again. We'll talk to you all soon, and have a great rest of your day, night, evening, or tomorrow. See you soon.
Thank you, Mike.
Thanks, everyone.